Hello, and welcome to our Intelligence for Admins webinar series. In today's discussion, we'll be hearing from Isaac Linder and Taylor Termentozzi as they cover some of the new features that we've released in the first half of 2022. Before we get started, we do have a couple housekeeping items to cover. You are in listen-only mode for this webinar. We do encourage you to ask questions in the chat that we will address as we continue through. This webinar will be recorded. We will send a follow-up email to you with a link that will have that will contain a link to the recording of this webinar. And lastly, at the end of this webinar, we will ask you to fill out a little survey. We want your feedback on other topics, use cases, or deeper dives into features that you'd like to hear more about in upcoming webinars. As we look to keep these events relevant and useful for our administrators, we value your input and your feedback. So I will go ahead and turn this over to Isaac and Taylor now. Thanks.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much, Kim. Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a great day so far. I am Taylor. I'm our Director of Customer Success. I've been with TrackVia for 6.5 years, and I've came from the implementation team and onboarding to customer success and kind of working around and working with all the teams internally here at TrackVia. And yeah, I'm excited to show off what we've done so far in the first year with the help of Isaac, and I'll let you introduce yourself.
Absolutely, thanks Taylor, and hi everyone. As Taylor mentioned, my name is Isaac Linder. I'm a product manager here at TrackVia, and I began my TrackVia journey 5 years ago as an implementation engineer. I've also worked as a customer success manager within the organization, and now am managing and overseeing the release calendar for our backend database updates, as well as updates to our iOS and Android applications. So yeah, for those of you who I have met in those roles before, wonderful to see you again. For those of you who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, I'm really excited to meet you and really excited to show you some of the development that we have from the beginning of the year. So yeah, thank you, Taylor. Want to take us through the agenda real quick before we jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. So starting off, Isaac is going to share his screen and take us through kind of the first part of the agenda, multi-account access. This has had a few different names through the years. We will show you what it looks like in its current state, some updates to our role builder, and some enhancements to the eyes and functionality there. The app overview, probably an overlooked page by many admins and super admins alike that we've updated. What are we changing on our dashboards and our tables, and a lot of the core and older concepts within TrackVia. And then I'm going to take you home with our exporting of child views, which has been a huge ask for a long time, and then some additional updates on our forms and views and just different ways to access different information, and then some final enhancements to how our importing and our flows work as well. So that's the full agenda for today. And yeah, as Kate, as Kim originally said, yeah, please use our chat window. It takes us a little bit of time to receive the chat and read it and then process it here. So please use that throughout the call in the webinar here, and we'll address questions and any topics that come there. So thanks in advance. And Isaac, yeah, please take us away.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Taylor. Can I just get a quick thumbs up from you that you are seeing TrackVia and my audio is coming through okay?
Only thumb you'll see is mine, and I can see your screen, so we're good.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Taylor. Well, wonderful. So as Taylor mentioned, we're going to start by taking a look at a feature that we refer to as multi-account access here on the product team. Over the past year, we started to notice and we started to identify that there was an increasing number of TrackVia customers who were actually utilizing multiple instances of TrackVia and needed to provision their users to multiple different accounts within the product. Sometimes this was because organizations needed to segregate their data into different accounts for security and compliance reasons because of the sensitive nature of data that they were tracking that only some super admin should have access to. But there were other use cases as well where we saw customers who were working with their customers or their vendors or suppliers or partners who are actually also on the TrackVia system. So earlier this year, we decided to design a feature that allows super admin to invite users into multiple different accounts, and the end user can just use their one single email address. So it's probably the feature that we're going to look at today that has the least amount of folks who will be utilizing this feature, just because it does require you to have access to multiple TrackVia accounts. But I think it's really important to look at, and it's really important for us to understand how it works. So what we're seeing on my screen is my personal account here in manufacturing and QC use case that I have access to with my email address. Up in the upper right-hand corner of your account in the user profile drop-down, you'll notice something that was introduced recently with this release. And this is that I'm displaying the name of my account in nice big bold text right up at the top of my users drop-down. This wasn't present before this release, but this is just letting me know what account I'm currently logged into. At this moment, I can't interact with this. It doesn't do anything, but it shows me a little icon with the first letter of the name of my account. And the name that's displayed here is being driven from the account settings page, where you're able to give your account name, set your company's subdomain, security policy, and things like that. But what we're going to look at now is I'm going to hop over to a second TrackVia account, a totally separate account that I'm referring to as TrackVia headquarters. So over here on the right-hand side of my screen, I have an entirely separate account that this user, my isaac.linder@egs.edu profile, doesn't currently have access to. And I'm just going to walk through the experience of a super administrator inviting Isaac into this second account, and we'll see how that all works. I'm going to come in, provision the user, set any settings that I need to, save the user to the database, and you can see that I'm able to add this email address to this account, even though the isaac.linder@egs.edu email address already exists in another account. Previously, this would not have been possible within the system. As a super admin, you may have run into before that if you try to add an email address that already exists in the system, you would have seen an error and it would have told you, hey, sorry, you can't invite that person. They already exist in another TrackVia account. Well, that's what we got rid of. And that's what we took care of with this release. And so now the isaac.linder@egs.edu profile that I'm trying to add to a second account, I just received an invitation email, the same normal TrackVia invitation email that all of your new users receive when they're invited to an account. And my profile is able to configure a new password to be able to log in to this second account. And that's a really important point that I just want to emphasize here as we're talking about this feature. When a user is invited into multiple different TrackVia accounts, they still have to maintain a separate password for each account. And that's because the security requirements and the security settings for each account are completely separate. Account A might have certain password requirements, and account B might be a little more stringent. Or one of the accounts might require logging in through single sign-on, and the other doesn't. So your security settings on your individual accounts aren't ever going to be compromised, and the person who you're inviting is going to need to go through the exact same setup and onboarding steps that they would need to, just like any other account. So let's go back over to isaac.linder@egs.edu, and let's see what this experience is like. I'm going to go ahead and refresh my screen, and I may need to go and actually set up that password. Let me just double check here. Perfect. So just as I expected, now when I click into my users dropdown, you'll see that immediately, as a byproduct of that invite, now I can interact with this icon. I no longer have access to just Isaac's webinar account, but I can click on it and I'll see a dropdown that shows me all of the different TrackVia accounts that I've been provisioned to. And here we go. This is the TrackVia headquarters account that I was just invited to a second ago. So now, really easily, within the same browser window, within the same internet session, I can just go ahead, click on TrackVia headquarters, and I'll need to authenticate into that account. Now, I didn't set up my password, so I'm not going to do that right now, but this is just to show you that with one click, you're able to move between the different accounts that you have access to. Once your password is set up and once you're authenticated into a second or a third or a fourth TrackVia account, the session timeout and the session expiration settings on those target accounts are still going to be honored. So that means that if TrackVia headquarters is set to log users out after 10 minutes of inactivity, but my account is set to log me out maybe after an hour of inactivity, those will still be honored. And any tabs where I have TrackVia headquarters open, I'll be signed out after the appropriate 10 minutes. It's nice to notice that I am able to have both of these accounts open in separate tabs so that I can toggle between them. I can have multiple TrackVia accounts up and be able to pivot through them if I need to do work in both accounts at once. And as I mentioned, if this second account had SSO requirements on it, I would be directed to the SSO page and I would need to log in through single sign-on, just as expected. So relatively simple from, I think, a conceptual standpoint, being able to switch between different accounts really easily, but it's a really powerful feature that's starting to unlock a lot of new possibilities for the way that our customers interact with each other, with other TrackVia customers, and can build out more advanced and robust systems that utilize multiple instances of TrackVia. So really excited about that. If anybody has any questions about it, definitely, as Taylor mentioned, please put those into the chat, and we'll review them as we go forward. This feature and everything else that we're going to be looking at today is live. So if you have access to multiple accounts or if you need to get invited to a second account, feel free to check this out. And I'm excited to mention as well that for those of you who may have use cases where you utilize multiple instances of TrackVia, and you do on the native iOS or Android mobile apps, we're adding support for being able to switch between accounts really easily, just like this, to the native mobile apps. And that feature will be available on both iOS and Android by the end of the month. So by the end of July 2022. Perfect. I'll double check the questions, see if we have anything coming in, but I'm going to keep moving. And now we're going to move over and we're going to talk about some updates that have been made to the role designer. Super, super exciting stuff. I'm going to stay within the same application.
Isaac, maybe if I can interrupt you for 1 second. A question related is there a maximum number of accounts a user can be invited to through the multi-account access?
Awesome question. Currently, there is no maximum. You can be invited into an arbitrary number of TrackVia accounts. And we are looking in the next iteration of this feature, we're going to be adding a search option so that when your list gets really unwieldy and you have a whole bunch of accounts that you have access to, we're going to be putting in the ability for you to just search quickly and go right to that target account without having to scroll or manage a super long list. So great question, but yeah, no limits there at all.
Okay. Second one from Michael: can super admins invite themselves to other accounts?
Awesome question. So that is not possible. For security reasons, the invitation into another account always needs to originate from a super admin that belongs to that account originally. There are two things that I will mention that I think are important that I neglected to touch on here on this, that are important to keep in mind if you are going to be utilizing this feature. The first one is that in order for that that experience of switching between accounts to be as seamless as possible, and for us to be able to keep you logged into your second account and your first account at the same time, and have it so that your browser never gets confused, you do want to ensure that all of the accounts that someone has access to have a custom subdomain configured. So for example, I can see in my account settings, whoops, didn't mean to click that. I can see in my account settings here, if I go to my account and I move over to my advanced customization tab, I can see that I have a subdomain set up, isaac.trackvia.com. And when I move over to TrackVia headquarters, we can see in the browser bar that this account also has a subdomain configured. That's going to be necessary for making sure that the experience is as seamless as possible for your end users. It still works without subdomains configured, but it's a clunky experience. You might have to log back in. Your browser might get confused with cookies. We're going to be making some updates to that in the future so that to make that even more accessible and even more streamlined. But just for now, something that I wanted to call out. And the other topic related to super admin being able to invite other users into their account. With this feature, something that I'll mention is that super admins are no longer going to have the ability to edit the email address of limited user profiles within their accounts after the user has been invited and has been verified into the application. What this means is that users that you invite into your account, once they configure their password and they're in the app, they are the only individual who's able to subsequently modify the email address that's associated with their profile. And this is exactly for security reasons that I imagine Michael is probably thinking of in the back of his mind. We don't want anyone to be able to get unauthorized access into an account that they weren't explicitly invited into. So of course, if there's more questions there or more clarity, I can point people to some help resources, and I'm happy to talk to folks individually after this webinar if that's helpful as well. Any other questions that we got coming in, Taylor?
Nope, all good. I think we're on to the next topic.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to hop back to my my main personal app then. And what we're going to do now is we're going to hop over to the role builder, one of the most important and historically one of the most, I think, difficult areas of the application for new admin to understand and to be able to work through. I'm really excited. At the beginning of this year, we took a large swath of effort to give this page a total facelift. Hopefully for those super admin and app admin on the calls, you've been able to have some good experiences with this page already. But if it's your first time seeing it, we're going to go through from top to bottom, and I'm going to touch on all of the new features that we've introduced here on the redesigned role builder. So what I just did is I navigated over to build a new role for one of my applications in my account. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start by giving it a name. This is going to be my quality control limited user role. Just like always, at the very top level of the roles page, you're able to specify whether the role you're building is a limited user role or an app admin role. And right off the bat, you're going to notice that we've added a bunch of contextual in-page help for admin who are working on role configuration. Each one of these little icons is going to give you some more detailed information about what the property is on the page that you're interacting with. And in most cases, it's also going to link out to our knowledge base to support videos. We found that this is a really ripe page for putting some more educational elements into, and hope you all are able to take advantage of those. So I'm going to start by configuring a limited user role, and you'll notice that we've divided the entirety of the roles page into 5 discrete sections to make the management and the visibility of our roles a little bit more intuitive and user-friendly. Up at the very top, you have your section that is going to show you all of the users that currently have access to the role. And there's some great new features we're going to look at for adding people into your roles. Then we have the global permissions, which is setting the overall app permissions for this role. We have our dashboards as a dedicated section, our flows as a dedicated section. And then last but not least, we have the comprehensive list of all of the resources, so the tables and views and forms that a person within this role has access to. So quick note, you'll notice if I'm building an app admin role, the only difference is that we don't have access to that global permissions card. And that's because for app admin, we know that they always have all permissions that are necessary for editing and modifying all of the resources within an app. So that's the only thing that's really going to change between the two role definitions. But I'll go back to limited user and we'll start to work through these 5 sections. So first and foremost, really exciting, we redesigned the way that you add people into roles. Historically, if you remember, this was a bit of a clunky process. And especially if you needed to audit or you needed to see if certain people were in this role currently. Well, we've redesigned the experience and it lets you start out by typing anything that you need for any users that you might want to add to this role. And you're going to see that dynamically as I'm typing, what's happening is a second part of this modal is being opened. It's showing me all of the search results for users that exist within my account, and it's giving me some really helpful contextual information that I didn't have in the previous role builder. First thing to notice is it's showing me right off the bat if this user profile is associated with another role within this particular application that I'm building. And this is really helpful because previously, if you had somebody that existed in role A and you needed to move them to role B, it was probably a bit of a headache to figure out and remember what role do they exist in, and then how do I remove them from that role, pull them over into the new role. Well, we've made that super simple. You'll notice that there are 2 different icons that we use for the users that are showing up in my search results. One is a little arrow that indicates that I'm going to be moving a user from their existing role into this new role that I'm creating. So no more jumping back and forth between role pages. I can just confirm that I want to move this person into the new role, and I can see them show up on my right-hand side of the modal. Then there are folks that don't exist within any role. Maybe I need to add them for the first time. It's just a quick click of a button. If I need to add multiple people, I can click on a whole bunch of different users and I can add all of them at the same time. I've got the same functionality for multi-selecting and removing users, or selecting everybody within one part of the system. As soon as I hit done, perfect. Now my view has updated and I can see the email address and the name that the user has configured in their profile for everybody who is within the application and within this role. And I can quickly go through, if I need to take somebody out of a role, I can just drop them from the list with this little X icon over on the right. Moving on down to global permissions, this is going to be, this was just a little superficial rearrangement of the elements on the page. Everybody's going to be familiar with these already. This is where you assign if the role should be able to print, share, or set up notifications, export data, and whether or not they should see the add record button on views as they are moving through flows. This was a requested feature a while back that we added, makes it just a little bit more simple and puts some guardrails in place for our limited users so they don't click around and get lost within the application. This is also where I'm able to set whether or not I want this role to see the global go-to navigation search bar. And for those mobile use cases, this is where you set the tablet display. If you want this role's dashboards to show up as the simple, normal mobile display or the enhanced dashboards with bigger and brighter and more responsive reports and charts. Getting down to the meat and potatoes of the role, we have the resources that this role can access. First and foremost is our dashboards. We've redesigned the way that you add dashboards to an account, and we've removed the cumbersome step of needing to grant permission to each element within a dashboard manually. We know that if you want to give a role a dashboard, that we should just go ahead and we should grant all of the elements on that dashboard permission within this role all at once. And so what that means is that now I'm able to see that this role has one assigned dashboard. And if I scroll down to the resources section, I will notice if I open that I actually already have a couple views and forms permissed to this role, even though I didn't do anything down here. And that's because these are the resources that exist within this dashboard that I just permissed. So quick note on once your roles start to get really big and they start to have a whole bunch of different resources associated with them, definitely check out the filter capability that we've added. This allows you to filter your resource list dynamically based on those resources on a particular dashboard or within a particular flow. This is really, really helpful for when you need to triage your role or you're doing some cleanup and you need to figure out, wait a second, what are all the different views and forms within this flow, and how can I easily see that they all have the correct associations configured and correct permissions configured? Which brings me down to this flows area. Exactly the same setup as our dashboards. We've now added the ability to permiss a flow all at once to a role and really treat a flow as a first-class citizen from the perspective of the roles builder. So I can see really easily a list of all of my flows within the account. I'm going to go ahead and permiss my flow to this account. We have a new modal here that is checking just to make sure that all of the resources that are needed in that flow have been permissed to the role itself and that there's no conflicts in the way that the permissions are set up. So I'm going to go ahead and approve these resources to get added. Actually, I'll go ahead and add another flow as well while I'm at it, just to show that you can add multiple. Click done, and now the same functionality for filtering my list of all of the resources I have access to, I can do that just with a click, and I can see exactly all the tables, views, and forms that are impacted within this particular flow. If I need to remove one, obviously, it's just a quick click of the button. And now we get down to really the lowest level of what is being permissed within a role, and that is all of your views and your form associations. Some really cool new things that we've added down here. So let's go through and jump in. In addition to being able to quickly just dynamic search for an individual resource, so if I need to find a particular table name, or if I need to find a particular view or form name, I can just search for it. I can see if there's any filters that are applied to my resource list based on the filters that we just talked about above. And then for an unfiltered list, I have a much more intuitive interface for seeing all of the possible resources in my account. First of all, we're not going to bother you with highlighting and foregrounding those tables where nothing has been permissed. So what we're seeing here is a list of all of the tables, and I can see those tables that do have elements that have been permissed to the role pulled up to the top and alphabetized. Sweet. Just a couple things that I want to hit on here that have changed before we hop over to the next feature. The most important one, and by far the thing that I'm most excited about, that people have asked for the most in my history being here at TrackVia, is that we now have the ability for a role to have multiple different add forms, multiple different create forms for adding new records to a table. This is because a lot of times the exact form that you want a user to use to add data to a table, it might be different if that user is coming directly from a dashboard versus whether or not they're navigating through a flow or interacting with a shortcut button on one of their dashboards. So still, just like you would expect, we have the ability to set a default form or the default form for adding records to a table. And you're going to see, as I do that, a couple things. We have all of the assigned views. This is exactly what you expect from the previous role builder, where you're able to see the views the role has access to, change their permissions, and designate the form that they should use for editing records within that view. You'll then set your permissions. Now we default your permissions to just be read, and we need you as a super admin to explicitly tell the role builder if you want the role to be able to edit or delete records. This is a big help because it prevents us kind of slipping up and folks forgetting that people have delete access. So we need you to explicitly permiss that. Make sure that folks don't accidentally get in a situation where they can delete information from the app. You'll notice when I set this edit form for this view, I got a little indicator down within the assigned forms section. And this is showing me just at a glance all of the different views that a particular form is connected to. This is really helpful, again, for when you're triaging super complex apps. You'll be able to see that relationship really quickly, dig into the view, or sorry, dig into the form, see which views it's assigned to. And here is where you're able to manage this additional create permission that I just referenced. So if a role has access to multiple forms, now you'll notice that I can set each of those forms separately to function as an add form. Again, this is just in the situation that you need to access that add form through a flow or a shortcut button or some other method. Your default add form will still be what is honored when you're going through the normal add record processes just to your views. So really exciting, multiple add forms, the ability to have your add forms permissed without connection to a specific view. Again, being able to permiss your forms for offline access and being able to indicate whether or not you should be able to create offline records. All of that is, still exists just as you'd expect. But really exciting that you can do that. And the last thing that I'll note on the role designer is we've added a bunch of knowledge and a bunch of logic for the system to determine those views that are being used as preferred parent views on forms that have been permissed or that are being used as child views on forms that are being permissed. So you'll notice as you go through the role builder and you start adding flows to your account and adding flows to and different resources to your role, we've added some great like inline contextual help. We permiss those preferred parent views and child views automatically and let you set the permission. So taking a lot of the hunt and peck kind of headache out of understanding all of the resources that are impacted when you add a single form to a role. And we've also added a bunch of error handling. So saving roles when things aren't configured correctly, we're not going to let you do that anymore. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate that. This is going to show me real clearly that I've got an error that needs to be fixed. I can click, scroll right down to it, and I'll see exactly the area where I haven't configured something properly. In this case, I've got a view that doesn't have a form assigned to it, so got to clean that up before we can save the role. But in the interest of time, I'm going to hop over and we're going to keep going through the features that we wanted to look at today. Perfect. Any questions, Taylor, actually, before I do that came up within the chat?
Nope, we're okay. Yeah.
Sweet. Then let's blaze through. I want to make sure you've got a chance to show off everything fancy on your side. But we're going to start with looking at what Taylor referred to as the most often overlooked page within the super admin experience, and that's our app overview page. We did a redesign here and we rewrote the code to make sure that this page is really performant and able to dynamically show you everything that you've got going on within your account. So if you ever need a bird's eye view of all the resources that exist within a particular app, check out this page. It's going to show you a breakdown of all the tables, views, forms, filters, and roles that exist within this particular application. It's going to give you some helpful kind of high-level metrics, and it's going to let you dig in and see deeper information about each one of these resources. It'll let you link out directly to the editor for each one of these resources. Going to let you search through them for our accounts where we've got a lot of resources, quickly sort the information within each one of these sections, and quickly jump to add a new resource. If you need to quickly build a new view, build a new form, build a new filter, role, anything that you need to access within the account. So a nice just high-level facelift here. We're going to be adding some more features to this page as we go forward, but this was just our first pass cleaning this up. Up next, we're going to take a look at an enhancement to the dashboard builder. This one is really, really simple, and it's just that we redid the code that is used for moving your dashboard widgets around within a dashboard. So we made this page way more responsive. You have much more granular and better control over the way that the dashboard widgets are resizing. There used to be instances where different elements might feel clunky or might feel like they're getting stuck on a particular part of the page. None of that exists anymore, and it's really a much more seamless and kind of intuitive experience rearranging all the elements on your dashboard. So we're really excited about that. And then last but not least, before I turn it back over to Taylor, we have made some light touches to the table builder. Earlier this year, we started to notice that for new admin coming into a TrackVia account for the first time, we were noticing some significant drop-off in users going to build a new table and then not doing anything, not completing their actions once they got to the table builder. Now, maybe those admin were just poking around and checking things out and they never had the intention to build a table, or maybe they were just confused and they had no idea what to do on this screen. Regardless, we wanted to add a couple nice little touches to help provide some additional context and help provide some folks with some guidance as they're building tables in the system. So first and foremost, this is a small one, but I think it's really good for us super admin to know. We are no longer pre-populating a table name called new table. when you build a new table, and that means that you are always going to have to explicitly give your tables a name. This is nice because we were seeing some novice admin frequently save tables just called new table in their account, and that's not really helpful, kind of confusing. And so we're going to have to go ahead, give this a little name, and then we'll look at the other updates that have happened on this, the table builder. First and foremost, you'll notice that the record ID, we have pulled this down into the list of included fields to make it a little bit more intuitive for folks to understand what exactly a record ID is, the fact that it is going to show up as a column on your views, and it's just another quick way to get to the configuration to set dynamically what fields you would like to show up as the record ID. We did a little grooming here to make it a little more obvious that folks are intending to drag and drop your field types over into the column for included fields. So just 3 interactions that we support. You can either pick up and drag one of these cards over, as you know, or a single click on the new little add verbiage that we've added, this little tap target, or, which some of you may not know, you do know you can always double click on a field type and just add them right into your list of included fields. So 3 different interactions that we support for whatever is most intuitive for you as you're building out your tables. When we switch over here to the included fields column, you'll notice that we have a new icon that allows you to quickly copy a field and all of its settings. This is particularly helpful for tables where you're building out use cases that have many, many different checklist or drop-down fields that all have really similar options, and you just need a quick way to copy a field rather than continuing to build it from scratch every single time. Down at the bottom of the included fields, you'll notice that we have a collapsible area where you're also now able to see the read-only system fields, last user, created by user, updated, and created. In the future, we're going to be adding representations of relationship fields here as well. Again, just giving our admins more and more visibility and context into the tables they're creating. And then last but not least, another little helpful add, we've put a table preview into the table builder to help folks understand the relationship between tables and the grids, the views that you're actually building out. So you've noticed that as I've gone through and added or removed columns, my information is dynamically changing within this view to help me understand the relationship, that each one of these fields is actually a column. This is how it's going to show up, and we've got some dummy data in there just for ease of mind and to help make those connections. You can collapse this if you need, because obviously our seasoned admins won't need to see that. And yeah, that is everything that we've touched here. I am going to stop sharing my screen now, and Taylor, pass it over to you for the last 15 minutes of the webinar.
Thank you, Isaac. All right, and again, a thumbs up if you can see my screen, please.
The only thumb you're going to see is mine, and it looks good. And yep, we're good to go.
Okay, very good. And one question that came through on the last piece from Jack: can you reorder the columns after a table has been built? And yes, you can, Jack. The drag and drop feature still reorders your columns in the table editor and in views, right? Moving them around outside the default view will save that column order across your screen.
Yep.
Okay, for my section here, the first thing that I'm going to show off is the exporting of child views. So in my account here, I'm on a form for my property management demo application. And what I want to do is I want to take these 4 logs that myself has logged against this task. I want to put that into Excel, do something else with it, share it, whatever your use case is here. underneath our hamburger menu, as it's internally known, now you have your export view. Boom, these 4 tasks have been exported right from here. If you remember how we did this previously, was if I wanted to get these 4, I would have to use my go-to search, look for the name of this view, my task logs, then manually filter it on the parent record, remove debris, then export it from the view. A lot of extra steps just to get this data. We've added it here. Huge improvement. We're loving it so far. Up next, we have a new icon here. It's just an expander. So you're on a dashboard, and this view is, maybe you have a bunch of views and they're all squashed onto one dashboard, and that's how you like to work with the information. It's all in a single dashboard. But if I need to see that in a larger screen, or I just want to open it up and see additional columns, you'll notice in your accounts the expander icon to maximize. This blows it up full screen, right? And I still have all my capabilities to search and filter. I can close it immediately. It's helpful for not getting lost in your navigation, right? So an alternative is you click on that view, it brings it up into its own size here, right? It's not really full screen, but it's a larger single page on screen. But then I have to go back, or I have to click my home icon to get where I was. If you have multiple widgets here, right, I can blow up each one individually, get my information that I need to, and go back. While we are here, what we've also added is an icon for sharing immediately from this view, even if it's not in full screen. So if I need to share this with Isaac, I can click my button, I can create my scheduled report from here, or do my one-time send, enter my information, and share it from here. That's available on our forms as well. Next up, we have some changes to what we've done with our import wizard. And I will take a file here, and I'm gonna drop my file in, right? I've uploaded it, or I'm going to upload it, and I am just updating information on my vendors table. Sometimes what you'll do is you'll export a view, maybe change a completed date or a target date to next year, right? You exported that view with all the data columns inside of it, you made a change, you want to import it. I'm a little zoomed in here for help, but if I zoom out where you can see full screen, if I only wanted to update, like I said, a date, or I just wanted to update the IP address here for my vendors, and I don't want to update, I don't want to make a mistake here, I now have this clear all mappings button, and you'll watch if I hit the clear and then zoom back in, it's not updating any columns, right? It's removed everything. So I just do my ID, and then I'll just do my IP address, and now I can import those 2 columns and not change my data set. Then we have our some changes to our flow builder. And mainly this is a visual change, but what we tried to do here is make it a little more visually intuitive on what the different steps of your flow are doing. A lot of times it's just kind of poor naming conventions, or right, you are just building your flow out, and you get lost in it a little bit. What we've done is 2 things. One, color code the different types of tasks, right? A task is you're doing something. Is it adding, is it editing, or is it viewing? We've color coded those so you can see what's the same, what's different. And then the icons here are letting us know what is happening as well. Then before, you'd have to click on this task, see what it's doing, and then you'd understand it's an add task, right? This is helpful for the building and editing steps of a flow. And last bit here is just a reminder that in each of your accounts, and this can be edited and changed, right? But under your help menu, you can look at our knowledge base. You can go and see our release notes, right? A lot of what Isaac and I have talked about today is recorded and put in our release notes, and there's different emailing schedules that we have that go out to certain individuals. But you can always return to our knowledge base or our release notes. Go to TrackVia University, right? We've built that in here so you can find this webinar and all of our other recording webinars, and any features and videos that we put up on that site. Also, feel free, I think we've had some comments come in on like ideas. As always, TrackVia is built on feature requests from our client base. So please use the suggest an improvement. Talk to your support team here at TrackVia. Talk to anyone at TrackVia. We log every single thing in our own TrackVia account that runs our business. And Isaac and our product team and our engineers appreciate all the details possible. All right, and last part, we're just going to close with our key takeaways here. A lot of the big items that Isaac went over for us, the multi-account access. This is also helpful for our partner channels, right? That's one company that has many companies and different TrackVia accounts. The role page, so much work. Shout out to our engineering and product team there. A lot went into that, and we know we're never done, so keep requests coming there. Exporting that child views. If you didn't know that was under the hamburger menu, now you do know. Please share that with anyone that has capabilities for exporting. And yeah, dashboards and tables and views and forms, we're constantly changing those as well. All right, some information to end our webinar with today. There'll be links on in this webinar, but also just in TrackVia University. If you haven't been there, create your profile. It's free. That is our hub for all things educational content. Our support lines here. If you have professional services needs, right, you don't have an admin capable or they're just way too busy, please utilize our team. We love it, and it gives us a chance to, get closer with our clients and our customer base. On our next webinar is coming up on August 24th around troubleshooting app scripts, right? Kind of a wild west of TrackVia, right? We're a low-code, no-code platform. We added app scripts in 2017, I believe. How do we get better and utilize the functionality that app scripts give us? What common use cases? How do we find the error in 100 lines of code? And how do we just make that experience a little bit better? Again, we're going to wrap up this webinar, have our recording, and we'll share a survey with you at the end of it as well. All right, Isaac, any final words before we sign off today?
Final words. Low code citizen developer revolution. Those are my final words.
Yeah, all right. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. We had a large group today, and looks like almost everyone stayed around the entire time. So thank you all so much, and hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.